Tonight, topsy-turvy trade war.
There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big.
President Trump backtracking on some newly imposed tariffs while Wall Street and American businesses remain skittish. And Trump 2.0 in prime time.
The golden age of America has only just begun.
Public reaction to the president's first address to a joint session of Congress and the Democratic response. Plus, breakout star.
If it was up to myself, I would go back there, go down there, and take all their songs from them and tell them to get the heck out.
Our CBN News exclusive with the newest and youngest Secret Service agent. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, it's Friday, which means it's time for our weekly Washington panel. Joining us today, senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright, chief political analyst David Brody, and podcast host of CBN's Navigating Trump 2.0, John Stolnis. Gentlemen, let's hop right to it, starting with the latest with tariffs. After announcing the new tariffs went into effect this week, President Trump then decided to add temporary exemptions on both Mexico and Canada because of fears of a broader trade war. David, let's start with you. Where do you see this heading?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. So back to you, John. I have no analysis other than that. No, I have a few things to say. But look, here's the bottom line on all of this. The White House seems to be playing the long-term game here. In other words, the External Revenue Service we hear so much about. Bring the tariffs in, lower the deficit, get the interest rates down, have a better economic playing field ultimately. But Donald Trump talked about a little disturbance in his State of the Union. I think that's where he's trying to find the sweet spot. What's a little disturbance? What's a major disturbance? And that's why I think you see some of the fluctuation here.
Kelly, I want to go to you. China is saying that this policy is two-faced and saying it will respond with resolute countermeasures. How do you see this playing out?
So I see that playing out as the president rolling the dice to find out if the tariffs will be able to push China to a place of coming together with America and respecting reciprocal trade. As you know, April 2nd, that reciprocal trade and tariffs actually goes into full effect. China has been put on notice by this president. The president says to the American people, if you have a wall in front of you, and I'm quoting him here from today's Oval Office meeting, sometimes you have to go around that wall instead of through it. So that's a message to China. It's a message to our neighbors, Canada and Mexico.
John?
Yeah, and I think one of the things to keep an eye out here, Donald Trump likes unpredictability. It keeps his adversaries and it keeps his allies on their toes so that he can get deals done. But at the same time, you do have to be careful, and I think he has to be careful that unpredictability doesn't morph into uncertainty. It doesn't morph into what appears to be indecision, backtracking on decisions. And we saw the stock market take a big hit this week. One of the things that we know the markets don't like is unpredictability. And I think that's what this week has felt like with regard to the tariffs, specifically on Canada and Mexico.
Well, David, you mentioned just a little bit earlier that Trump, during his Tuesday address, mentioned, quote, a little disturbance. What signs are you watching for that could wind up not just costing American consumers, but potentially the second Trump administration?
Well, first of all, I'm actually watching consumer prices and specifically polling. Those are important things. And, you know, you just look at that. Of course, there are a lot of economic indicators as well. So there's a lot of different things to look at here. But ultimately, Trump's going to go off of what he likes to call his street smarts or kind of a sixth sense. And I think that's ultimately where this is all going to lie anyhow.
Well, you know, Congress is up against a Friday deadline to pass a funding bill or face a government shutdown. Not all Republicans favor keeping spending levels where they are, and I believe that's Mike Johnson's goal right now. And also, in addition to that, they might not get enough Democrat support. So a shutdown would further add uncertainty and hurt the economy, would it not, Kelly?
It certainly would, and Democrats are favoring a government shutdown. Who would figure? Because last year they were saying, no, we can't afford a government shutdown. So this is really falling along partisanship and partisan lines. And what really happens in the wake of all of this is that the American people will suffer if Congress fails to do what it should be doing, and that is legislate and actually provide for a budget. The president ultimately wants a big bill But right now, they have to get over this threshold in terms of how we continue the resolution to keep spending going on. And at the same time, keeping in mind that the president wants to impose tariffs in order to bring more of an economy here to America, more manufacturing jobs. That, in fact, is actually happening as we speak.
Either one of you, David or John, want to predict whether we avoid a government shutdown? Looking into your crystal balls?
I think we will. It
John,
sounds the reporting
go for
on
it.
Friday is that Speaker Johnson. Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
I think Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump, it sounds like they want a continuing resolution to take them through September, which would essentially take them through all of the 2025 fiscal year. And the idea is that you've got DOJ making cuts. You don't want to impede President Trump from putting his spending plan together. So even if it means keeping things at the current Biden level, it seems as though Speaker Johnson, Donald Trump, and perhaps enough Republicans are on board with that plan.
David, you want to weigh in real quick?
Yeah, and speaking of House Republicans, yeah, sure. Speaking of House Republicans, you have the head of the House Freedom Caucus, Andy Harris, who's working on getting his House Freedom Caucus fiscal restraint buddies in line. So I have a feeling you're going to see the House Freedom Caucus come around on this and realize that 6 months of a continuing resolution, which, by the way, they literally hate. I mean, from the pit of their stomach, they hate. But they'll do it here because it's one of those see the forest from the trees. They got to make sure they get to budget reconciliation, which is the key goal here.
All right.
And
gentlemen,
if you allow government shutdown, it will not go well for the American people at all.
Gentlemen, hang tight. Stay with us after the break. A look ahead to Trump's second term by reviewing President Trump's address to Congress. We also discuss how Democrats responded. Our Faith Nation panel returns after this.
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation, we must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president. There are only two genders, male and female. And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future because the golden age of America has only just begun.
Some highlights from President Trump's first address to a joint session of Congress since he came back into office. The speech seemed to be popular with the audience that watched, according to a CBS News poll. I'd like for each of you gentlemen to weigh in on what stood out to you from the speech, starting with you, Kelly.
I'm going to go to the human quotient of all this. The president actually signaling to America that he does have a heart. When he reached out to young DJ Daniel, we'll be seeing that later on in this broadcast. But the bottom line is he showed a heart for a young child with brain cancer and provided that young child with the fulfillment of his dream to become not only a police officer, but a secret service agent. That was quite a moment. And then providing basically for a young man to be able to go to West Point Academy. The human element is what touched, I think, a lot of American people and caused them to say this president really does care.
David, also some backlash from the Democratic response there in the chamber that night.
Oh, well, we can talk a lot about the Democrats, and I will quickly do that. I do want to say about the speech itself. We talk about the culture wars, you know, the 1980s culture wars, the religious right and all of that stuff. Well, culture wars are a whole different today, whether it be immigration or the gender issue, all that. And Donald Trump, the president, spent a lot of time. We knew he'd spend time on immigration, but especially on the gender issues. And I thought that was striking to me as well. He was in his wheelhouse. These are issues that he's tracking with the American public on. As for the Democrats, yeah, I thought, honestly, sadly, they stole the show by sitting on their hands, by not applauding for the 13-year-old who had brain cancer, whether it be Laken Riley's parents. There were other times where they just sat on their hands, didn't do a thing, didn't applaud in a nonpartisan moment. So I thought that really hurt them. Not to mention Al Green, probably still roaming around Capitol Hill with his cane and very upset, you know, when he was kicked out. You know, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer told Democrats before the State of the Union, please, whatever you do, don't make it about yourself. Keep calm. let's just kind of calm down, everybody, and they did the exact opposite.
John, let's talk a little bit more about that as far as the Democratic strategy opposing Trump. It seems like they're all over the map.
Yeah, there's no cohesive strategy right now for how to approach what Donald Trump is doing. And I think it's interesting that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer were able to read the room ahead of time. They knew what it would look like if what we saw unfold on Tuesday night actually unfolded the way that it did. And so it was interesting to me how you had this rank and file, not a certain percentage of the rank and file of the Democrats in the room, because not all of them were acting out or holding up signs, but they disagreed. They clearly went against the wishes of House and Senate Democratic leadership and did their own thing. And it, I think, has kind of blown up in their faces. I know Ro Khanna, Senator John Fetterman have both talked about and been critical about how Democrats responded in that speech. And so there has got to be a concerted effort and message on the Democratic side to say, what is our strategy and our game plan? There's lots for us to oppose. We disagree with this person on any number of different things, but we have got to find a way to articulate that message in a way that doesn't make President Trump look good and make us look bad.
So there was another moment on Tuesday's speech where Trump gave a shout out to Doge and Elon Musk. But before the week ended, he seemed to clip his wings a little bit by reminding cabinet secretaries that they have the power to cut the federal workforce, not Doge. David, how should we read that?
The fact that Elon Musk is being reined in as we speak, and I think it's going to get worse. That's my prediction from an analytical standpoint. I have been talking about this on the 700 Club for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I specifically said that, you know, what is the process? What's the chain of command? You've got cabinet secretaries that are supposed to be making these decisions, and apparently Elon Musk is either making these decisions or going straight to Trump and Susie Wiles and other people and Stephen Miller in the Oval Office. Like, what's happening here exactly? I mean, this should be cabinet secretaries doing this. And dare I say, I'll pat myself on the back now. I think I was proven right the other day when indeed that's exactly what happened. Cabinet secretaries are getting frustrated that Elon Musk is doing the runaround and apparently has all this power. And Trump had to say, hey, hold on, no, cabinet secretaries are the ones that are going to make these decisions going forward.
David Brody with the prediction coming in. Coming up, we'll talk about what President Trump is calling the last warning for Hamas, as well as talk about the rise in anti-Semitism. Stay with us.
One of the days they handcuffed one of the boys that was with us, and when he came, and he brought a cutter, and he cut his hand and smiled. They used to eat in front of us while they starved us.
It's a miracle.
That you're living.
Yes.
I was kidnapped on 7 October. My wife and my 2 daughters been murdered on the same day. I was held in captivity.
I was moved 33 times, spent time in tunnels with no air to breathe, barely food, hardly any water, saw horrific torturing of hostages that I spent time with.
An emotional meeting at the White House this week when a group of rescued Israeli and American hostages, along with their families, met with President Trump in the Oval Office to thank the administration, to ask for their help with getting the rest of the hostages out of Gaza. So right after that meeting, President Trump sent a direct warning to Hamas militants, saying that he wanted them to immediately release all hostages or face death. We also learned that the administration is in direct talks with Hamas. Kelly, where do you think this is all headed?
So, John, you and I talked about this before, and the president wants to bring a deal to the table to get that peace negotiated firmly between Israel and Hamas. But where this is headed right now, because he has broken policy and protocol for the United States in dealing with terrorists, Hamas will only use this, as we're seeing right now, that they're brushing off his response, now blaming him and Netanyahu for continuing the heartbreak for the hostages' families. There are still 59 hostages still being held captive. Hamas will continue to use that to exert more pressure, not only in the United States, but on Israel as well. The president is definitely trying to get something done, and he's actually showing force. But how far will that force have to go in order to actually eliminate the threat from Hamas and return the hostages?
John Stolnis, can I get you quickly to weigh in?
Yeah, and I think that's the next step is if Hamas doesn't do what the president says, what does he do? Does he allow Netanyahu and the Israeli Defense Forces to, if he's holding them back at all from doing anything, does he allow that to move forward? Does he put more pressure on Israel to increase any concessions they might need to make? Again, this is about getting a deal done, to get a peace deal done. It's certainly, I can't imagine it would involve U.S. military forces in any kind participating in airstrikes, and certainly not U.S. troops on the ground. So it is kind of a mystery what the next step is.
Somewhat along these lines, a Senate hearing this week focused on the issue of growing anti-Semitism here in the United States. Let's listen to part of it, and then we'll discuss on the other end with David.
Here is one picture taken on the campus of Columbia. In the back are Jewish students waving American flags and Israeli flags. In the front is a Columbia student wearing a mask because these cowards are oh so brave they cover their faces, holding a handwritten sign that says Al-Qassam's next targets. Al-Qassam is the military branch of Hamas. Understand what this student is saying. She is calling for the murder of her Jewish classmates.
You tell me to go away, tell them to go away.
Today, the administration announced that they're canceling approximately $400 million in federal grants and contracts to Columbia University over the school's, quote, continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. David, is this just the first shoe to drop, or will there be others?
First shoe to drop, no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, late this week, the State Department revoked the first visa of a student here that has not necessarily Hamas connections, but was sympathizing with Hamas. They haven't released the details specifically of that. But so that is the first visa of a student revoked, and I'm sure there are going to be more to come.
Anti-Semitism is growing here in the year 2025. I also want to squeeze in one more quick topic, also on the foreign front. The president today warning, quote, large-scale sanctions and tariffs on Russia for, quote, pounding Ukraine on the battlefield. This, of course, after a yawning gap between the United States and Ukraine in recent weeks. Kelly, let's start with you. What are we to make of this?
So the president today in Oval Office for a gaggle talked to reporters about this very subject. And he said that he wants to be tough on Russia and would apply sanctions on Russia because he wants to get Russia and Zelensky to the table for negotiating a peace. And the thing is, the critics who are watching this are stating that the president has to be tough equally on both parties to get them to the table to negotiate peace. The president complaining that 2,000 people are losing their lives every week because of this war, and that it must be stopped because it's nothing more than a meat grinder. He was joined by National Security Advisor in the Oval Office, Mike Waltz, who says this battle, this war has got to come to an end, and stating that President Trump is the one who can make it happen.
Just about 30 seconds left. John Stolnis, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, and I think it's important for the president to, I think it helps with his credibility to, he's avoided trying to say anything negative about Putin. I think it helps with his credibility to also come out and say, you know, you're responsible for a lot of the violence that's taking place, most of the violence that's taking place in this war, and certainly within Ukraine's borders. So I think it's a positive step in the right direction for the president to come out and say that.
David, next time we're going to end with your crystal ball, looking into the future. Up next, he stole the show during the president's speech this week. Now we get to know him a little bit better. We'll introduce you to DJ after the break. Finally tonight, 13-year-old DJ is winning hearts after President Trump honored him during his congressional address. Battling both brain and spinal cancer, he's still chasing his dream of becoming an honorary police officer nationwide. CBN's Tara Mergener has his story.
DJ's journey began several years ago when doctors gave him only 5 months to live. Since then, he's been sworn in by more than 900 departments and holds a title that even he never imagined.
And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service.
That's such a moment. How did that make you feel?
great, but I was not expecting him to give me an actual badge for Secret Services. I ain't gonna lie, my jaw dropped all the way to the ground.
Late last week, President Trump called DJ's dad with a personal invitation.
You didn't even have much notice.
Oh, we didn't need it. I mean, President Trump wanted us to come. There's no excuse why we couldn't get there.
For the 13-year-old, a visit to the White House to meet the president and key officials is the culmination of a remarkable journey that began with his cancer diagnosis in 2018.
I couldn't walk or talk, but I used a stuffed animal turtle just to talk, just not in the head and everything.
7 years later, he's still fighting.
He's got cancer cells all over the place. This is where the original tumor was. Now he has another tumor in the original spot. He has one here and another one here. He's got it down all down his C3, C4, C5, all those down his back of his neck, down to the spinal cord.
Even facing those health challenges, they travel the country, with DJ receiving recognition from law enforcement in 16 states.
I, DeGorge Daniel,
do solemnly swear.
Though this week serves as the pinnacle, he felt troubled by how some Tuesday night didn't show respect for the honorees or President Trump.
I did not appreciate that, what they were doing to Mr. Trump. If it was up to myself, I would go back there, go down there, and take all their songs from them and tell them to get the heck out.
It bothered you, all that was going on.
They was making all that noise I could barely even hear.
Still, the Daniels say they remain focused on the mission, getting law enforcement recognition in all 50 states while hoping for a cure.
That's the worst thing for me to tell you is Daddy can't fix it. And I said, but you know what, we're not gonna accept that. We do not have bad days. And we just, what the country folks will say, we just get her done.
Do you pray?
A lot.
We're singing that one song that got you through.
It goes like this: inside out, you must serve my Jesus from the inside out.
In Washington, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Wonderful, fantastic interview with a great young man. Thanks for watching this edition of Faith Nation. We hope to see you right back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.